everybody, and welcome to Convo Fango. Today we are joined by co-writer and director of Queen of Spades, Patrick White.
Hello.
Hey, welcome. Thanks for coming to hang out with us today.
It's dark and stormy here. I think we're about to have a thunderstorm, so probably a perfect time to have a
Oh,
conversation.
nice. Ooh,
Yeah.
spooky.
Mhm.
Get that aesthetic going. Cool.
Yeah.
Also, how long can you hold your breath? It looks like you're already maybe submerged.
Well, that's
Ah,
I got Ava Preston here behind me. So
nice.
yeah.
All right, so tell us, what is Queen of Spades all about?
So Queen of Spades, easiest way to kind of tell a North American audience is if you ever did North America, if you ever did in North America, Bloody Mary, it's the Russian version of Bloody Mary. And I think a lot of the confusion is they think that we couldn't get the rights to Bloody Mary, so we just went out and called it something different. But this is folklore in a mythology that is Russian inspired. So if you go over to Russia, the kids in the high school are daring each other to go into the bathroom and call upon Queen of Spades rather than Bloody Mary. So it's very similar. And one of the aspects that I love about Queen of Spades is you actually take something, usually lipstick, and you draw on the mirror, and you draw a door, and you draw stairs, and then you ask her to show herself. Where obviously Bloody Mary, you're just talking. There's no actual action with the mirror.
I loved it was a little more ritualistic in that way, which like somehow made it creepier for me. And then also kind of reminded me of Beetlejuice when they draw the actual door. Cause like you're like saying the words is one thing and doing like the incantation, but like you're drawing a door and the steps. So you're basically like, here's the entryway into my life and my home. Like, please come and like haunt me. Like that's awful. So what was the inspiration for this?
So I had done a short film called The Garage around 2014, and I made it here in Ottawa. And one of a friend and an executive producer and partner at Level Film, a Canadian distributor, that distributed Queen of Spades, The Dark Rite, which is the Russian. They had the remake rights to that property. Mm-hmm. And I think after they saw The Garage, which is a bit dark, a bit more Twilight Zone-ish, they said, listen, we have this property, we have the remake rights. Do you and your producing partner, Brendan McNeil, want to take a crack at it? And so we said, we had been getting ready to do something else, but it didn't have distribution. It didn't have any kind of linkages. And then this was handed to us and we watched the Russian version and thought it was like a blast and said, sure, let's take this. If we know we'll have the distributor on board, it's got kind of a known entity to it. And then we went from there and developed the screenplay. And then I was able to, I was the producer of Jack Brooks' Monster Slayer. One of my best Fangoria moments is we had the cover of Fangoria with Jack Brooks' Monster Slayer. And John Ainsley, who wrote Jack Brooks, who's a good friend of mine, I just reached out to him, said, listen, do you want to come on board again? And then we got working on the script and ended up putting it all together and made it. So that's kind of how it originated.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. See, I love like just folklore in general fascinates me, and I like learning about different cultures and their folklore. But it's very interesting to me that we have so many similar legends and myths and folklore, like whatever the culture is, and they date back like so far back that you're like, these predate even when these people would have ever encountered each other. So that is always really interesting.
Well, and I think, and someone said it, and we don't explore it too much in this. There's a little bit of reflection, but it's all a matter of if you spend too much time looking in the mirror, someone's going to call you vain. But the funny thing is, and it's almost like Zoom, right? Like sometimes you're like, oh, my hair's messed up, and you're like, oh, it's the wrong side, because it's like if you spend a lot of time looking in the mirror, stuff starts to look very different, right? Because it's not necessarily how you represent it. And then, if you go back, I always remember in film school, when doing the cinematography work, like anything you're shooting through a mirror, it's down one stop. Well, where's that light going, right? Like, so there's all this kind of stuff that I think if you really break down, if you really look at mirrors, is it a true representation or is it a flipped representation? So is that a separate kind of world or entity? it really leads itself to be able to be taken in all sorts of ways. And I think you hit the nail on the head. That was the biggest thing for me, is like, here I grew up my whole life knowing Bloody Mary, but some kid in Russia knew Queen of Spades. And it's like, well, how does that happen that these two things kind of sprout in totally different areas, right?
And I've never heard of Queen of Spades, so I was like, oh, like this is really cool. And like I said, I just like, that's always fascinating to me, because it's like we're on opposite sides of the world, but like as far back as we can remember, like we did it, our parents did it, our grandparents did it. Like it's just like you could ask and just trace it back generations and generations. And I'm like, that's creepy. Like to me, that's very scary.
Well, and that's it. And it's, it kind of goes back to, where does inspiration come from? Was it somebody dropping some little piece? And it's, I always look at it, I always kind of say, how did ants and A Bug's Life come out at the same time? You know what I mean? It's like, and so it is one of these fascinating things. Where do myths? Now, we don't explore that in the movie, but it is definitely something that is worth exploring at some point, of where did these myths start? How do they kind of grow? And then do they stay regional? Because there's got to be, probably, whether in an Asian population or whether in an African population, is there a secondary, view of what the Queen of Spades or Bloody Mary is, right? So
it's like one of those things where it's like, I'm very curious about it, but it's not anything I would ever delve too far into, being like, why do these connect? What's the connection? I have like the board and stuff. I've seen enough horror movies to know. I just won't go down that path. I'll leave that for somebody else. But another interesting thing is, I think for me personally, mirror horror is a very scary thing. And obviously it must be for a lot of people, because we have all of these legends and things that kind of across the world. And then I just kind of wonder, like, is that some deep rooted primal fear, or is there like a psychological reason for it? Like, do you have any theories on that?
I think it just goes back to, when you're looking in, are you seeing what you expect to see? And I think a lot of times it's reflecting what we do expect, but sometimes it's reflecting something we aren't. And I think, the other piece, and one of the things that my editor, Jordan Krug, really added to this, is as he was seeing the dailies, he started, because we didn't necessarily have it all planned out in the early pre-production, but he kept on saying, listen, I really see as putting the queen in some spots on the mirror. And I think that's part of it, where, oftentimes when you look at a mirror, and I think if we think of ourselves, especially in a car, you look in a mirror, you see something, but you don't trust it because it was in a mirror, then you turn around, or you look behind you, right? Because it's like, even though that reflection is essentially giving you a mirror, a perfect representation, you don't trust it and you turn around to see with your plain eyes. And so I think it's just, there's an inherent disbelief sometimes when we see stuff, that then we want to see it with our plain eyes. So I would kind of think it goes in that direction, where it's just that trust, and we just don't really trust ourselves always what we see when we're looking through a mirror.
That's a good point, actually. I didn't even think about that, because instinctively you turn to face it and see it straight on, whereas you should, in theory, be able to just navigate it just as easily in the mirror and go punch somebody like this, but the instinct is to be like, no, I need to look at it with my actual eyeballs.
Yeah.
Nice. Did you have a favorite part of making this movie?
I think one of my favorite scenes in the end was what I call the Blue Nightmare. So this is when Mary comes home to try and find her daughter, and I think it's a pivotal moment, because Mary at that time is not totally convinced that the kids aren't just being idiots and playing games with her. And then I think her subconscious, which is really the nightmare, I think telling her, listen, you got to get really serious, because something is going on. Your daughter is being taken. And then playing around with this whole, and I've watched it with a couple of people, even my wife, where it was really driving my wife crazy watching that scene early days, because she's like, why is this mother not grabbing her daughter? And and I think we did a good enough job that hopefully early enough in that scene you aren't fully aware that you're in a dream. And so that as you watch it, you kind of discover you are. But it's that moment of, and I think this is always powerful whenever an audience is willing and almost getting frustrated and like angry with a character to do something is pretty compelling. And so I would say that scene in the end really, I absolutely love it, how it turned out. Just oddly enough, one of the scenes that I really, because me and Scott McIntyre, the DP, we storyboarded the whole scene or the whole movie, but it was a matter of, always on the day, it's a matter of like what can really happen. And there's a scene between Mary and Anna in the bedroom, and I had them kind of blocked so they would be opposite each other. And a lot of the scenes are very similar in the sense of that blocking. And I think it was Kaylin or Anna, I forget which one, but they said, listen, can we just play it like this? And they just threw out, just a suggestion. And I kind of try to approach the whole movie with, how can I do this as collaboration? Like, let this, if we can make this as much about everybody's ideas, obviously I'll have to pick and choose certain things that I agree or don't agree with, but, letting them be able to kind of bring that to us was fantastic. And it's, I think the scene, is just them talking. And then at the end, Anna gets out and walks out. And that's one of the first times Mary kind of notices, Mary, the mother character, notices that the mirror is covered. But I loved that we shot it differently and it went smoothly from this suggestion from them.
Nice. And I feel like that allows it to play and just come across more organically and naturally a lot of times, when you can have them say like, well, I feel like this is how I would do it, or this is how this character would do it. And then that just ends up feeling like, oh yeah, okay. And now it feels very organic because that is what they would do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. And there's also, I feel like I was very lucky, and I feel like I grew up in a time where there was a lot of gateway horror, but also teen horror. Like I feel like when I was in high school, it was like this like golden age of just like getting all these really, really cool things that were meant for me, and as a horror fan, that was fantastic. And I feel like we kind of lack that now. It's getting a little bit more like there's more kind of teen horror, but I feel like this one is really cool because it very much centers on the teens, and these are our protagonists. And then you have that element of like well, I'm a kid and the adults are not believing you, which is always very frustrating.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think this is, not a throwback. I don't know if you would call it necessarily a throwback, but it's not, and I think a couple of people have said it's kind of got some J horror kind of elements to it. And I think maybe that's more the Queen element. But I think realistically, I think it's a horror movie in the sense of there's a summoning, and then it's a matter of, what are those rules once you do summon it? And we don't really, I didn't want to go down anything with respect to any kind of extreme graphic torture kind of horror. Just wasn't what I wanted to explore. And I don't think the movie really called for it. And it was a matter of, it was really about it in essence. And you're right, it's more that teen element. Like let it be, some teens do something stupid, and do they pay the consequences? And I would say the one difference is traditionally a lot of the teen horror has some kind of there's that sexual element. And I would say we don't have that because of the age of our protagonists being down around 13 years of age.
Yeah, which I appreciate. I mean, I enjoyed it as an adult as well, but also just like a lot of like teen things are like teen slashers with like sex and things like that. And I wasn't allowed to watch that stuff growing up yet. You know what I mean? Like I was kind of banned until I got a little bit older to watch it. So it's like the stuff I was allowed to watch was the stuff that was like missing that particular element. And I appreciated that the protagonist was quite young. So then we don't have any of that. And then it's like a haunted, true, like kind of horror kind of thing.
Well, and the other piece that I liked about it is then I didn't need to have this frivolous kind of storyline about a love interest or whatever, just to kill it off or be suspenseful. That was replaced with this relationship with her mom, right? The tension with her mom.
I was gonna say the love element is it's at the core of it, it's a mother-daughter story, and it's kind of like what latchkey kids, is when I was growing up, that's what you called it. But it's like single mom and she's working and she wants to be there and the daughter's frustrated because she's not, but she's doing it for her daughter. So it's like this kind of like butting heads dynamic, but then you get to watch kind of a love story blossoming between those two, which I like. I'm a mama's girl, so I appreciated that as well.
Thank you. Good.
The look of the queen, how did you decide on that? Is like, did you go from any kind of like the lore? Is there descriptions in it? Or did you guys just kind of be like, all right, like we have an idea of what we want it to look like?
So going back to that collaboration aspect, and I would call out two pieces. Like I'm very fortunate that on Jack Brooks Monster Slayer I got to work with some great people, and a guy by the name of David Scott at Foreman Dynamics was our key on that project. And I just reached out to him and gave him the script. And then we started having a conversation, started talking about the folklore of the queen, and that she would typically drown them. How did she get killed? And so it was a matter of, okay, how do we go with this gray? How do we look at what was in the Russian one? I would say the Russian one, she's got less ornate of a wardrobe. And I'm very fortunate. My aunt, Delphine White, is a quite renowned costume designer. Like she did video drone and scanners for David Cronenberg.
Damn.
Yeah, so that was my first introduction into film, was through costume. And through Delphine, I was able to bring on a fantastic costume designer named Chelsea Graham. And so I would say there was the look of the queen aesthetically with respect to her prosthetics, but then there was the secondary talk of how do we create the silhouette? Like who is the queen? She is this bourgeoisie woman who came upon, hard times and lost all her fortune and stuff of that nature. And so we also talked, because there's several times in the movie, we go for the silhouette more so than just her face. And so it was a matter of how do we create this kind of, the shape of her hair or kind of her crown as part of it. So I would say those were really the two big things, like how she died and then about, how she lived with respect to the costume that really influenced it. And then again, try to let those people that are more expert in those areas really drive it.
Right. Nice. Well, it's very effective. It was very scary. But yeah, you're right, because of it had to have kind of a distinct silhouette or else it wouldn't have been as effective. So it's really nice. I mean, there are times where we do get to see her face and that's also very terrifying. But when you just see this like ominous like silhouette coming and you're like, oh shit, that's her. Like I know that's her.
Well, and I think that's some of the best horror is when just leave it to me. I'm going to be able to imagine something way worse because I'm letting my own imagination go.
Absolutely. You set up the dread and then you just let the audience do a lot of the heavy lifting on that, making the worst possible scenario.
Exactly.
The pool scene, I have to say, that was awesome. I think maybe pool stuff and water stuff is very scary to me as well. But that scene, I was just like, ugh, like very anxious that whole time. It is also beautiful, but anxious.
And I think one of the films that, I think does an amazing job with a young protagonist is Let the Right One In. And obviously they have a climactic scene at the pool. But it was a matter of, we wanted everything. And have you seen the Russian version?
No.
So the Russian version, like at the end, they rush to a hospital and find in the basement an old emergency room, which I always is like, okay, that's super convenient. Like it works in the movie, but I think I'm always a very logical person. It was a matter of like, how can we introduce a defibrillator that makes sense, but it also ties into the movie, and it's going to work on a lower budget. And it was a matter of, well, there's usually one at a pool area. and then it was like, okay, how can we weave that into the storyline? And I would say again, the DP, because the first time I'd ever shot in a pool, but we bought an aquarium, and then we put the camera in the aquarium, because then the aquarium submerged. Whoa. And then the camera is protected in the aquarium to be able to get shots like that. So it was an awesome experience. It was definitely, and then obviously with the tones, we could go to that blue green kind of, and it was just a matter of, and then I would say our editor, because we shot a whole bunch, and then we were able to just kind of build this up and then put it and let the editor really build the scene, which was awesome.
Very cool. Yeah, I really liked that scene. I'm a big fan of that one.
and that's where, again, like, I think in the because we shot our green screen day as our like kind of last day. And that was where our editor Jordan was saying, listen, we've got these great moments of Matthew kind of being puppeted almost like before he dies. Why don't we try and see if we can get the Queen interjected in there? Obviously we have it auditory, like we have some audio stuff, but can we do some stuff with some of the effects? And we were able to get it, and I think it really adds to it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Was that a challenge for the actors, having to like be manipulated by the Queen, but really they're just standing there alone, you know?
One of the strongest parts about this movie is the cast. Like, from my point of view, we lucked out with who we got, and I would say they were all fantastic. Like Ava Preston, who plays Anna, it was interesting because through the auditions, we had a lot of great young actresses come out, but could they play that whole spectrum? And that was the thing. Could they be, kind of the bitchy early teen to, being kind of naive or playing around with these other teens to then fully possessed right at the end? And
spoilers.
And Ava was incredible on that. And I would say the other cast members were all just fully in. And I think because we got pretty close pretty quickly, everybody was just willing to try. And so there wasn't any real time that anybody really, said they were uncomfortable or whatever. Like, a lot of them, put that trust into me, into the film, in the sense of they went all the way out there. And then it was like, maybe I'd have to bring them back a little bit, but for the most part, they were, because like Daniel Cash, who plays Smirnoff, he does some pretty crazy stuff at the end. And he was just going for it. He was just like, it was great. It was just going for it as big as he could.
Love that. And you're like, reel it back in just like a tiny bit.
Exactly. Or
too scary.
I just need a piece of it, right? So
yeah. As they're just doing crazy contortions and stuff, and you're like, I'm so sorry to tell you, I only need 5 seconds of, but that was amazing. Very cool. Would you say it was the most challenging part about this? Was there any kind of scene in particular, or just an element?
I had never done stunts, and so here we were doing stunts with not only a minor, so Ava, and just kind of going through that process. I think, most filmmakers probably start off doing stuff with their friends or their family members, and they don't really, care as much if they get hurt. Once you get into this scenario, you're into regulations and insurance. So I think just walking through that process, and then also being cognizant, not wanting anyone to get hurt, because if anyone gets hurt, you're going to slow down. So I would say that was a big learning curve on the stunts. And then I hadn't really done too much with visual effects. And so also a matter of trying to understand how much I could do or what I couldn't do. And then how much budget we had to do that. So I think those were kind of the biggest challenges for me. It's like, were we going to be able to get the stunt day? Because on the stunt day, a lot of times you're not in control. It's like, all right, there's a debrief with the actors, there's a debrief with the stunt person. So you're just kind of waiting for your time to be able to say. And then on the special effects, just trying to understand what was going to be possible or what wasn't. So thankfully, again, my team really supporting me and kind of giving me ideas of what was possible or what wasn't.
Mm-hmm. And those are two times where you both, I guess, have to put a lot of trust in your team and just know that you've got the right people, because you're like, okay, hurry up and wait. And then also visual effects, like how much can we do practically? And like how much now are we leaving for the visual effects team to like take over and make it happen?
And to me, I think the approach we did with effects was do as much as we can on site, because it's always gonna play the best, and then can we amplify it? And so I would say most of everything we were trying to do is in that realm. It's about what could we do on set in a timely manner, and then what could we amplify later on.
Mm-hmm. What was the biggest visual effect that you had in this, if you can say without spoilers?
See, you know what, like I whatever I answer I'm gonna give, I'm sure the visual effects house is gonna say you're out, because like for me, I would say the stuff we did in the pool, or sorry, not the pool, in the bathroom for Sebastian, was a bit challenging, because we were, something was happening in the water, and that was, how it was drawing him over some other pieces. Yeah, it's going to be tricky not to say something that doesn't give away.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to stop you right there then. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us? Tell us about this.
No, I think it was a blast to make it. It's I think it was really, we hit upon the two big things that really drew me in. The big thing was the mythology, just that this is something, and then the second piece to me was how we could really make it a mother-daughter story, and it was really about just seeing that bond and that strength, and then just that fierce loyalty that a mother has to try and save their child. And it's, again, as I like to say, like, she has to make the hardest decision of all to try and save her, and she doesn't even know, but it's what a mother will go for. So, it is a horror movie, but I think there is this great relationship piece built into it.
Yeah. Got the love story at the heart of it.
Yeah.
You got to make us care about these people.
Yeah, it's funny. I wouldn't typically call it a love story, but that's a great way to frame it.
Yeah, there's all different kinds of love stories. That I can count it as a love story.
Good.
All right, everybody, make sure to go check out Queen of Spades. See, available in select theaters June 11th, on demand June 15th, and on Blu-ray June 29th. All right. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with us today. I'm excited for everyone to see this. And congratulations to you all. Thank you for scaring me. I'm going to be looking over my shoulder constantly, like when I'm doing mirror stuff for the next couple weeks, probably. All right. Can you tell us where we can find you on socials and stuff?
Yeah. So I have a very,
if you want people to follow you on social.
No, I got to get better at it. So I'm Cold White Gravy on Twitter. And I think that might be my Instagram as well. I've got to get better at this stuff. What is my Instagram?
You're on there so often that you don't even know your handle.
I think, I'm just Cold Gravy. So I don't have the white piece in the middle. So just Twitter is Cold White Gravy, and Instagram I'm Cold Gravy. So.
Cold Gravy. Okay.
And actually, so just a little fun tidbit, my aunt, Delphine, her business was called Hot Turkey Dressing. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, so it's kind of a play from that. It's no to my
That's aunt. Cute. That's really cute. I love that. As an aunt, and that's my favorite job that I've ever had, my favorite role, like I extra appreciate that. All right, guys. If you're not subscribed to Fangoria, what's wrong with you? Get on it, fangoria.com. You can find me at horrorgirlproblems.com, and go check out Queen of Spades. All right. Thank you so much.